Hello and welcome to Monday Night Football. For the first week that I'm back, at least in a little while, we had an unexpected hiatus that I know was probably covered last week, but we're back and ready to go, and we'll be with you for the foreseeable future, so we apologise for that completely unexpected hiatus. Especially for the podcast listeners, because the show was on last week but the podcast has not yet been released. The two stars of last week's unreleased podcast are with me today. We've got Hearts panellist Sean Meechan and Hibs panellist Mark Smith. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Right, so in honour of a rather unexpected result at Celtic Park this weekend that we will analyse in great detail as we continue with the show, the opening question today for the panel is your favourite ever non-derby, our favourite caveat for these kind of questions, because otherwise we'd go down the same well-trodden path time and time again. So your favourite non-derby draw. Mark, do you want to start us off with your favourite Hibs non-derby draw?
Great question. Going to take you back to Wednesday the 5th of May 2010 when Hibs were away to Motherwell. Went 6-2 up, and miraculously, I don't know how, Motherwell came back to 6-all. Actually, I think there were 6,500 in attendance, and there was probably about 1,000 Hibbies left by half time.
I legitimately thought, because I did think for a little while about opening this up to your least favourite draw ever as well, and I legitimately expected that this would be your least favourite draw ever. Why is it your favourite draw? Are you purely one of those base football fans who just loves a goal or above all else?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for the footballing world, when these games come up, they're epic. 6 goals at half time. You know, Hibs came in 4-2. I think they were 4-2 up at half time. Yeah. We had a fantastic team out that day. We both had Stokes and Reardon on the pitch, who both got in and amongst the goals. And for anybody going away from home and scoring 4 goals in the first half, great to watch.
Incredibly, a team of strikers that love to track back as much as Stokes and Reardon, conceding 6 goals away from home.
Yeah. So we were 4-2 up at half time. Motherwell came back into the game. Once the second half had commenced, if I remember rightly, we went 6-2 up. And then Hibs just fell apart. Koke scored, Haitley scored, Sutton scored, then of course you're sitting and it's 6-2, 6-3, 6-4, 6-5, and you're thinking, surely not. I can't even pronounce the guy's name.
Lukas Jutkiewicz. The name will forever remain in my memory, because I can remember sitting watching that game, kind of on my phone, not really paying attention. And as each goal went in, you just pay attention more and more to that goal at the end. I celebrated it somewhat like a World Cup final goal, because it was just mental at that point in time. So Lukas Jutkiewicz.
Thanks.
Well, you're welcome.
Right, did you think, just a final question on this game, Mark, did you ever think, when your head dropped probably about to floor level when that Jutkiewicz wonder strike hit the back of the net, did you ever think that 7 years on you'd be quoting it as one of your favourite games?
No.
I think that's a fair expectation. Right, Sean, what have you got for favourite Hearts draws?
I have got one which is a bit more positive. Actually, I came out of it happy at the time. I've went for Hearts 2, Rangers 2 at the end of the Championship season. Zayfout coming off the bench to get 2 goals. There's for very few people who know, I had a nice wee interaction with Billy Elmoshney at that game as well.
I remember that.
We'll not say anything more about that, but yeah, that game was just incredible. The fact that Hibs had just pipped Rangers to second place, and the fact that Rangers were thinking, right, well, we'll get a 2-0 win against the champions, go flying into the playoffs, and Zayfout comes on just to do the toilet on their strawberries, and it was brilliant. It was a nice way to finish up the season. Yes, I would have much preferred a 5-0 win against them, But to get the 2-2 in that way was brilliant. And Zeefuik cemented himself, 1 as joint top scorer, and 2 just a bit of a legend.
That's the question I was going to ask. Undoubtedly, that was a great moment, especially, as you say, the expectation was there that actually this day may become a bit of a damp squib. No one really wants to collect a trophy having just been beaten by one of your biggest rivals. So the 2-2 draw was always going to be welcomed, especially in late dramatic fashion. But it does seem to have added to the legend of the game a little bit. The fact it was Zeefuik, the fact that was his last appearance in a Hearts jersey, it always brings a wee bit romanticism with it, because he's no there to then spoil that image at all. That is how you remember Gennaro Zeefuik. Do you think that plays a big part in why you love that game so much?
Very possibly, just because he was such a huge factor in the second half of that season. He gave us something that we just couldn't get from any of the other players there. He had that wee bit of X factor, which I think he could have brought to the Premier League. A lot of people are sceptical with that. I don't know, I don't particularly like you saying his last appearance for Hearts, because I still hold hope that he might come back at some point. But I totally left on the best terms possible, and you couldn't have wiped a smile off my face with anything that day. It was it was pretty phenomenal feeling.
Okay, couple of quick ones for mine. Hearts, well, Braga 2, Hearts 2, I think is a big one. Hearts qualifying for the inaugural UEFA Cup group stages, as they were called then. That was a massive result, I think, and actually it led to Hearts bringing a couple of big teams back to Murrayfield at the time. It was sort of important for Scottish football, as people said at the time, but especially for Hearts, they were good memories of European games. Equally, I think my favourite ever draw, and it's an odd one because when you actually look back at the team, you think maybe should have won that game, but I think my favourite ever draw was March 2006, Rangers coming to Tynecastle, Hearts 6 points in front of them in the league, going for second place and a Champions League qualification place. And Rangers came, Chris Boyd having given it his usual, the pressure will tell on Hearts. We were in a title race last season. It was 16 points a few months ago, and now it's only 6 points, and blah blah blah. Hearts scored after 9 minutes. Edgaris Jankowskis were by far and away the better team in the first half. I don't think Rangers got a shot on target. Then squeaky bum time came. Craig Gordon made an amazing save for Thomas Buffel. Thomas Buffel then scored, and you thought, oh, this could go really pear-shaped, and Hearts knuckled down, held on, got the 1-0 win, kept the length of the gap. 1-1 draw, sorry. Well, it was like a 1-1 win. Kept the gap at 6 points, and as we all know, went on with a Paul Hartley penalty against Aberdeen to secure Champions League qualification before having to go to Ibrox on the last day and all reading papers for the first 15 minutes of the game. So that was a very good draw. I've got memories of staying up all night before that, just not being able to quite fathom how important that game was. So avoiding defeat there was like a win in itself. Right, what we're going to do off the back of that is go a very, very quick break, and then we will come back to give about 25 minutes, half an hour, to Hibs' almost historic win, but still pretty monumental draw. Certainly an unexpected result at Celtic Park in a very positive sense. So we'll give about half an hour to that, then we'll give probably about 15-20 minutes to a major disappointment at Dens Park. Where have I heard those words before? And we will try and be a wee bit concise and actually get you away early tonight. So stay with us on Radio Saltire for Monday Night Football.
Music for Scotland. Radio Saltire. Radio Saltire.
We're back on Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. Right, Mark, I want to start at the end, and then we will double back very, very quickly.
I hate when they do that in films.
Is this supposed to confuse me?
No, I'm not going to go full Memento. We're not going to work back in like 5-minute increments. I'm just going to ask one question about the end of the game, and then we'll go straight back and I'll walk you through it in chronological order just to keep you happy and comfortable. What was your feeling at the end of this, at the full-time whistle? We've obviously heard from the managers and their thoughts, but they're always quite calculated, and it's always been through the management filter first. You as a supporter, did you feel like it was a brilliant point, an unexpected point gained, or did you feel like it was an opportunity to really do something historic missed?
A bit of both. Being completely pragmatic about it, I was proud. I think that was the thing that stuck out the most for me, is that sense of pride where they've gone to Celtic Park where so many teams have been and gone and just not been able to break them down. They gave a fantastic account for themselves. They played extremely well, gelled well, created a ridiculous amount of opportunities again at Celtic Park, which not many teams will go there and do. So overall, I was really proud that Hibs had came away with a point. Disappointed, don't want to get ahead of ourselves. It would have been nice to have been in the position to have ended that unbeaten run, especially with guys like Stokes and Ambrose in our squad now. Lennon going back to Celtic Park for the first time since he came to Scotland, or came back to Scotland as a manager. So yeah, there would have been some, cherry on top of the pie to make everyone a lot happier with the result. But yeah, take nothing away from the squad, take nothing away from how Lennon got his tactics and the team were organised. And yeah, I was really proud of the team.
Okay, right, as we mentioned there then, let's double right back, and you touched on Lennon's tactics there. So he went with a diamond away at Celtic Park, which some would see as being pretty brave, to go sort of 4 at the back and in theory leave yourself a little bit exposed in the wide areas, which we know in theory the diamond does. What were your thoughts on seeing the diamond, and how did you think it operated, particularly early on? Because I think there was a wee bit bravery required there to stick with it when maybe things weren't quite as fluent as they could have been in the early stages of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got Whittaker, and he was in a position that he was committing to going forward. I thought Bartley played extremely well in terms of when the fullbacks were committing to runs. You could see that Bartley, if for instance Ambrose etc was getting committed to challenges or going to close the ball down, Bartley was there and almost filling back in for a centre half, which is what you would expect in the position that he plays. Slivka in the early moments of the match, I was a little bit concerned about him not picking up. He just seemed a little bit disjointed, a little bit out of place on several occasions. Look at Cal McGregor when he scored. He had made a run of damn near 40-50 yards and it just wasn't picked up on. Slivka was running the whole time with his back to McGregor, not tracking the run, and even if he just went with him, got goal side, he possibly could have cut out either the ball or just had some sort of influence to prevent that goal from happening. So I thought the diamond played well. It was brave. The defence were linking up and Bartley was filling in where he needed to be. Seemed to be good communication, but it was disappointing yet again to lose an early goal.
In terms of that early goal, and we will get on, the game gets a lot more positive from here, but in terms of the early goal, it was striking how little pressure appeared to be applied to the ball when McGregor breaks through. Don't get me wrong, everyone's super high on Callum McGregor at the moment, as we see with him being added to the Scotland squad today, but his technique's very good for a young Scottish player. His first touch is pretty effortless and he does tuck it away right in the corner. You certainly can't blame Ross Laidlaw for it at all, but it's awfully easy for him to get that shot away, and it feels like there should, in normal circumstances, there were a guy breaking on the edge of the box, there should be at least one, if not two guys breathing right down his neck, and that's not really the case. Why was that? Have you got any feedback on exactly what went wrong there?
Totally agree. I think when you look at the highlights and you look at it back, like I say, focus on Slivka. Watch how he didn't track the run on McGregor. McGregor had started out probably just inside the halfway line, and he's ran and he's tracked that run for 30-40 yards to get onto the end of the pass. He's then cut inside, no pressure from Bartley. Bartley was possibly wrong footed. He's committed to try and somehow, don't know what he was doing to be fair, to try and block the shot. I think it was his left foot that he must have led with, and right foot went out, wasn't able to block it. But McGregor had kind of cut inside and got the shot away, so you had two scrambling players within the round about the 12-yard area, Bartley and Ambrose. Was there any communication for one of them and go and track the run, put pressure on the ball? And from Slivka's standpoint, he was a wasted man in my opinion. So I think if anybody's, you look back on the highlights and watch Slivka, he's running towards goal from about 35-40 yards out with his back, couldn't see McGregor, which was really disappointment. He was focusing on the ball. No need to be doing that. Just look at the players, track the runs, and try and break the play up. So that would be my views.
I think that's always going to be the downfall of playing a team with such, especially the midfield, with such attacking intent, is that when you are tracking back, they're not going to have that spatial awareness and the observational awareness to see the men making the runs and track them, which is somewhat ironic because they would be doing the same at the other end, so they should be able to somewhat tap into what's happening. The biggest concern for me with that goal is definitely Bartley going with his left foot, reaching over, almost turning his back on the ball. You can throw yourself speculatively at it, but if you want to see where the ball's going and try and get your foot precisely on it, I don't know why you would turn your back.
To counter that, I mean, the only thing would be if he's anticipated that McGregor was going to maybe drill it, at the near post, and he's thought, well, he may be in a position where he'll play a cross goal into the bottom corner, which he did, but when McGregor's came and cut inside, he's maybe anticipating that he's going to get on his right foot, drill it into the bottom corner. Turned out to be the wrong choice. He's actually went the other way. I think he got a hold of it with his left peg, fired into the bottom right hand corner, crossed the goal. Laidlaw no chance. Bartley wrong footed. Intelligent play from McGregor, to be fair.
The only thing I would say on your point, Sean, is that I do think it was brave to go with the team that Neil Lennon went with, because it is a sort of football first team to an extent. It's not a team to go there and spoil the game and try and nick something late on. But I think as Mark's spoken about there, if you're looking at apportioning blame for the goals, the blame goes with individual players. I think if you look at that midfield as a diamond, they're generally sort of box-to-box players at the most attacking. Not all of them can do defensive jobs. All of them should be able to get back and try to run. So I think it's harsh to say that midfield was naive defensively in some sense. There's one absolute stopper in Marvin Bartley, and then although we've not seen a huge amount of Slivka, the impression of him seems to be that he's relatively similar in style, at least, to John McGinn, and that he is up and down, he'll work on the edge of both boxes. I think he could have been. I think it's fair to expect him to do better there. It's not a case of say you gave Jamie Walker that job, or you gave Alexei Eremenko that job, and then afterwards you're saying, well, did you really expect him to track back? I think Slivka plays in a position where it is fair to expect him to track back.
No, and I get that. However, he has done a Scholesy and just, well, the man can go, like I do it up the other end. I'm not necessarily paid to do it here. But, I mean, as I say, well, as you've said there, Marvin Bartley is that stopper at the back of the diamond. However, he's playing centre half at that point. He's the furthest man back. He's the one trying to make the block and tackle. The biggest issue for me is if he's set up to jockey the man, I've no idea how his left leg comes across as opposed to just outreaching with his right. It's a weird one.
I mean, that is certainly one of the issues with the diamond, but comes from when the diamond becomes too great, when the gaps between the diamond are too vast, and I think that's certainly a valid point in that Bartley gets pushed back to the point where he's a third centre half, and that leaves a massive gap in between the actual back five as it's become, which is the bit that McGregor exploits, because actually by the time he arrives at a defender, he's just dispatched the ball in the bottom corner before they can engage him. Right, Mark, on the actual, so I am going to play Memento way here slightly, although it's covered by the first goal. We didn't actually talk about the reaction to the lineups. Now, obviously, when Celtic go ahead 1-0, it feels very much like same old Celtic. However, when the team lineups were announced, I know for a fact that there was some reaction that, they've given us a wee sniff here. They've given us a bit of a chance that potentially hadn't been expected. I know Tam McManus was pretty active on Twitter at the time saying this is a major chance for Hibs without Scott Brown and with Griffiths and Sinclair on the bench. What were your thoughts when you saw the lineups? And was there, do you think that their absence, the fact that even at 1-0 down, Lee Griffiths isn't on the park and some major influences on the Celtic team aren't there, do you think that helped in terms of staying in the game and still being dogged?
Not really, no. And the reason for that is Celtic have got the depth, the squad. You'll take nothing away from Celtic, given the fact that Griffiths wasn't starting. You know, they had Dembele on from the start. He was prolific for them last season.
Although not a fully fit Dembele, I would say. Still
that's
working
right.
back.
But you can see the class with, now, let me get the pronunciation right here. Is it Eduard? The chap from PSG, we'll go with that.
Eduard. I think is the exact
Big Eddie. Along with Big Davy.
Yeah.
No, I think with the starting lineup with Celtic, they've got strength and depth, quality of player in every position that they're playing as a team. They had threat, both with their technical ability and their aerial threat from set pieces with Dembele and Eduard up front. And you look at the first goal, fantastic ball, into Eduard. He's stretched Ambrose, he's pulled him out of his centre half position. Ambrose has gone with him. He's ran rings around him and he's got the pass away to McGregor. You can't blame Ambrose. The only thing could he get a bit tighter? Could he have put a bit more pressure on him? Could he have possibly got a foot in? He's just literally ran him 360 degrees and laid off a pass. So coming back to your initial point, I don't think so. I think Celtic have got strength and depth in every position, and yeah, not for me.
Okay.
I think the only thing the biggest chance you would say that Hibs got in the game is taking out a full steadied centre midfield. And yes, they have got good players to bring in. I would say probably better than Scott Brown, not necessarily better than Stuart Armstrong, but you don't have that consistency and you don't have two players who have been playing together regularly.
You sacrifice the balance a little bit as well, I would
definitely. You take out obviously one of the biggest voices in the game as well, and Scott Brown in the centre of the park.
Okay. With that in mind then, Mark, if you weren't sort of buoyed by Celtic's selection and you thought it was going to be as tough a game as ever, when Callum McGregor's shot hits the back of the net, looking at the rest of the game to go, were you a bit trepidatious at that point, or did you still think there was an opportunity to go in and do something? Would you have settled for the final whistle right then, for example?
I think Hibs have been in a position that they've went behind every game pretty much this season. Something that we've touched upon, and I don't want to labour the point again. Hibs, they show the strength and character to come from behind. Don't know if it drives them on, but coming back to points I've made before, you concede an early goal, you're putting pressure on the strikers and your midfielders to then have to come up with the goods to score at least two to get something out of the game.
It is different at Celtic Park though.
Oh,
do you not
definitely.
In terms of if you go 1-0 down in the 15th minute, the general reaction is this could be 3 or 4.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I was disheartened after 10-15 minutes when I seen that we had went 1-0 down. I think the thing for me was getting into half time. Hibs had managed to steady the ship.
Yep.
They didn't concede another before half time. Lennon's got them in. They were poor in some respects in the first half, came out like a different team in the second half. They were on top of Celtic a lot more. There's some fantastic opportunities just before McGinn got his equaliser. Lewis Stevenson had a fantastic ball in the first half that was through at Boyle, and Boyle's a fast player. You look at Boyata and he tracked the run. They talk about that extra yard in football, and big centre half, lunge and tackle, managed to stop Boyle from scoring.
That interested me that bit though, because when you watch that play out in the game, Boyata turns on the afterburners and catches Boyle. But having seen Boyle in full flight, surely Boyata is not a yard or 2 yards quicker than Boyle over 20-25 yards. But it doesn't look like Boyle's dawdling. It really doesn't. But he must have hesitated for a second, or he must have not been quite in full flight, given that Boyata catches him with a wee bit to spare, actually.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the things Hibs need to work on. Some players just have it. Some players need to hone it in as a skill, is that composure. Boyle is evolving as a player. 2 years ago, he got himself into great positions. He's got fitter. His pace is there, but he lacks a bit of composure in the final third. And actually, I think that's fair to say for a lot of the Hibs centre forwards and attacking wingers. They get themselves into great positions. We look at the amount of shots on target, off target, week in, week out. We're not in a position where, you know, Boyle's finding himself in a yard or two to go. He could have cut across Boyata, forced them to make possibly a red card challenge in terms of, if he touches me, if I go down here, I'm giving Willie Collins something to really seriously think about. He doesn't get the shot away early enough for me. I think he takes one touch too many. He tried to run it further into the goal, but as you do that, you're narrowing the angle. You're giving the goalkeeper the chance to come out, makes it more difficult to get the ball through, and you're allowing Boyata to get up to a faster pace, track the run back. So I think it just comes down to decision making. Boyle's got two options. In that split second where the ball actually gets through him, I don't think he was expecting the ball. It was a fantastic ball from Stevenson. Whip damn near 60 yards straight down the right hand side. Boyle's through, he's clean in on goal. Let a shot fly, or try and, you know, give yourself more of an option by cutting inside, force a challenge from Boyata, and then you've got the opportunity to go at either corner. Instead, takes a touch, bit of a rhino touch, gets in front of him again. By that point, Boyata's up, closes down, and we've seen that throughout the week against Anderlecht. You know, he was fantastic. Brendan Rodgers gave him a lot of praise. A little bit disappointing that Boyle didn't score.
That said, having seen Hossolu's goal for Newcastle yesterday, Boyle can count himself a wee bit unlucky that Boyata didn't just assist him there and knock it in off him, because it was a very, very similar chance with a ball that you're amazed that it can be that easy to carve open what is supposed to be a quality defence.
Just to back you up, Sam, seeing as it's out now, I'm sure everyone's been waiting. EA Sports would definitely back you up that Martin Boyle must have been easing off, because he's got at least 13 points on Dedrick Boyata for sprint speed, and even more on acceleration.
What's Martin Boyle's sprint speed?
He's an 85 for acceleration and an 86 for sprint speed.
That's alright. It's not quite
although
as fast as
the
I was
worrying
expecting,
thing is, I'll consult this, we can come back to it after the adverts, but I'm pretty certain that's actually no much better than Jamie Walker, which is definitely wrong.
That is contentious. Yeah, indeed. Okay, right, let's get back to the game itself. So Hibs started to get into the game. It's unfair to say that Hibs were ever out of the game, but not the most fluent of starts. But at that stage, yeah, we will talk about James Forestier, don't worry. But what
I'm screaming to get off my chest.
Right, let's do it now then, before we go, because then we can properly go into the positives. Right, James Forrest is booked for simulation for one challenge.
Great decision.
Then a very similar challenge is not booked and it's play on and Hibs come away with the ball. Thoughts on both decisions?
Well, the first, without a shadow of a doubt, was right. You look back on the replays, and Forrest was down before he even managed to, Bartley was running across him, and Bartley, rightfully so, had his hands up, and there was about a yard of distance between them, and then Forrest is just like, both feet stick his studs into the ground and just threw himself down. Embarrassing, really, and it was the right decision, to book him. And then, not even 10 minutes later, he does exactly the same thing. Sean and I were actually having a bit of debate before the show even started about this. It was getting a bit heated.
Definitely the boo boy tonight for the Hibs.
It was getting a bit heated. And for me, I just felt he should have went.
I think the biggest issue there is, and it's less so for the first one, but the second one, Whittaker sticks out his leg and gives him an opportunity to go over it. Yes, he doesn't go over it in the best way, but if he takes half a step, he clatters into his leg anyway. The leg is there. It's the same as the Rangers one from
But choosing to go down is not in the rules of the game, Sean. You can't. I agree that in certain scenarios, things that look like dive are actually people anticipating contact and trying to get out of the way and all those kind of things. But in that scenario, if you can't stop your momentum, then you run into him and you go down, and then it is a foul. You can't just choose to go down half a yard early and still expect to get the free kick, which is essentially what he's done there. However, and I fear that by bringing up this point, it may strike at the heart of quite a lot of the things that we talk about on this show, because generally speaking, if you look at the other news today, for example, these are fairly fickle matters that we debate here.
Fickle.
However, I do fear that it's one of those conversations where you say it's Willie Collum at Celtic Park for starters, but generally speaking, you'll no see a player get sent off for 2 dives. You're just not going to see it because it's too contentious an issue, and you're certainly not going to see it in front of 59,000 fans at Celtic Park. It's just never going to happen.
Wearing green and white hoops.
So while we can debate it until the end of time, that's not going to change the fact that in no world does that second yellow card ever get given.
If that's the case, why is there no free kick? You know, if Colum is so certain that there was
in if his bottle's gone and he wants to cover up for it, just give a free kick.
I mean, you know, take Sean's point on board, right? He's saying, you know, Whittaker was in a position that he's left his leg in. He did dive into the challenge. He's gave the opportunity for it to be contact. You've got the linesman that's not even 15 yards away, who's clearly not gave a decision. Column's not gave a decision. So it's just infuriating, especially as a Hibs fan, when you go there and people talk about favouritism to the old firm, massive decisions in games. Referees need to stand up and be counted in that point. But it's very difficult. You know, let's take nothing away from Colum. You know, it's not easy for referees.
Listen, it's one of the things that entirely unites us in this studio every week, and that, I mean, if you want to see how Hearts and Hearts fans feel about it, stick Craig Levine into YouTube. Craig Levine, Dundee United versus Rangers into YouTube, and you'll see his reaction when the first line of his press conference that day or his post-match interview is, well, it would be as well not turning up. And we've all had games like that when you've gone to Glasgow. However, like I say, in this scenario, to be honest, the only thing that surprised me was that Colum wasn't savvy enough to realise that waving play on wasn't really an option there. Yeah. So, because then everyone's going to say, well, if it's play on, it was a dive, he didn't have reason to go down, because the ball isn't played in the second one.
No,
it's not. It has to be a dive or a foul, really, because you can't. If he's gone down, there must have been contact, in which case it should be a foul. Kick. If he's gone down with no contact, he didn't slap. It was really clear that he didn't lose his footing, so then it's a dive. I was amazed that he wasn't savvy enough to do what he would normally do, I think, in that kind of scenario, and just give the free kick to Celtic, because then it's not. Yeah, Hibs fans may say it was never a free kick, but no one's thinking actually he should have been booked again for dive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then there's
free kicks happen all the time.
You've then got the whole controversy. Well, if he did give the free kick and they scored, what's the consequence? I mean, Hibs
that
are lucky.
happens on a regular basis. That team's scoring from unfairly awarded free kicks.
Right, quick yes or no question for both of you. I want a yes or no answer. If that's someone with a more preconceived idea of them being a diver, such as Solius Mikalunas or Jamie Walker, is that 2 yellows?
Hang on, was there no a Hibby that we could throw in there to make it a fairer
Mark,
question?
who dives for your team? Or who has dived for your team?
I don't think I can answer that question.
Green tinted spectacles.
Nick Colgan.
I think in any game a referee would struggle to book someone twice for diving. I really do. I have seen Roman Bednar got sent off for Hearts at Tynecastle against Partick Thistle in the quarter-finals of the Scottish Cup for a dive. He had only been on the park for about 10 minutes, got booked, but he didn't get his first booking. It was a
second yellow, yeah.
But he didn't get his first booking for simulation as well.
Yeah, can I jump in and make 2 clear points? One, if you look at the column from Willie Collum's view, the angle that he's got, without a shadow of a doubt, there's a possibility that there may have been contact. Now, in football, it's a contact sport. Just because there's contact does not necessarily mean that there has been a foul that has been committed. So, from Collum's angle, he's maybe just thought, play on. You know, there was nothing in it. It was a 50-50. There was contact, yes. Possibly there wasn't. If there wasn't, then I've got an issue. He may, just take the viewpoint that never seen it from the angle that I was at. Yeah, there was something in it, but not enough to give a foul. So,
okay, I'm sure you said there was 2 points there and only one game. Right, let's move. Anyway, let's forget Forrest, because he affects my happiness, generally speaking.
I try and forget Celtic, just in general.
Aye, we'll do that very, very shortly for a few weeks at least. Right, the rest of the game. Hibs changed. somewhere in there. Half time would be the easy place to put it, but I'm not actually convinced that's the case. It maybe happened slightly before that. They became galvanised, they became more confident in the attack, and certainly when John McGinn's strike hits the back of the net to make it 1-1, that very much cements the change in the game and that Hibs are there to compete. What was it for you that changed? Because tactically speaking, and as football hipsters like we are, we like to put a lot on the tactics. It actually doesn't seem like a huge amount is tweaked tactically as the game goes on, but Hibs' mentality and Hibs' character in the game seems to change pretty rapidly. What is it that led to that, do you think, and why?
Well, just before we touch upon the second half, just one last point. If Hibs, Edward had a fantastic shot at goal which Laidlaw managed to save just before half time, lucky not to go in 2-0 down. And I think off the back of that, Lennon would have got the team in and said, look, they're there for the taking. Let's get out. Let's get it more organised. Let's get tighter. Probably went through Slivka at half time, given the run that McGregor's made, and he was nowhere.
That's really stuck with you, eh?
Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal.
Okay, move on. Positives.
You're there in a position where you're saying to the players at half time, let's go out. If we can equalise within a short period of time, they're there for the taking. And that's exactly what we've done. Came up, heads up, not getting the pressure, because the nerves will have settled as well. Playing in front of 60,000, Celtic Park's an intimidating atmosphere to go to, undefeated in 57 games within the SPL. That's all playing on the mentality. Players are a little bit nervous. Came back out second half, those nerves will have settled. Lennon's got drilled into them. You're just as good. Go and prove yourself.
There was a positivity in the goals that Hibs scored, in that they essentially played Celtic at their own game and for a period of time at least beat them. And that when you look at John McGinn's strikes, everything that we've labelled as being negative about what Hibs did for McGregor's goal is very much there in spades for Celtic. There's no enough pressure on the ball. McGinn's got an opportunity to steady himself and get his eye in, and then dispatch the ball right past Craig Gordon. I'm going to ask a positive question, but in a negative way, because I can't think of any other way to ask it. Why does John McGinn not score more goals? If he's got that in his locker at the home of the champions, I think he's barely in double figures for his career, and yet he scored a double against a very difficult Celtic team on Saturday. Why does he not do that more often?
Great question. One of the things that I love about John McGinn is he's not a selfish footballer. He gets himself into great positions a lot of the time where he's got the opportunity to have a shot at goal, but he knows there's probably players in the team that are better at finishing than him. One of the things I said at the start of the season was that McGinn needed to be aiming for double figures this year if he's really going to progress. He needs to take more risk. He's got a great left peg. Have more shots at goal. Lennon's given him the freedom to make those runs. If he gets himself into good positions, have a shot at goal. That's one of the things that McGinn is now starting to really flourish with. And I think the freedom that he's given Boyle on the right, the freedom that he's given McGinn when he knows that he can play more forward, because you've got Bartley that's in that holding midfielder position that's then going to cover for full backs and support as an extra centre half. He's just given McGinn the freedom to run box to box. He's got a great engine on him, gives him the opportunity to drive the ball, attack players, attack opposition, and that's why we're going to hopefully start to see more goals from McGinn.
Okay, Craig Gordon then pulls out an absolute worldie to deny Stephen Whittaker, but arguably doesn't necessarily cover himself in glory for McGinn's second. Actually, it's one of those where when you watch the highlights back, you can hear the commentator stop for a second because he's not quite sure where the ball's gone, and then realises it's behind Gordon and it's Hibs are in front and set up for what would have been a very, very shocking victory for Scottish football. At that point, obviously, there's a huge buzz when Hibs go 2-1 up there. I mean, personally, listening to it on the radio, you could just feel it, that moment of shock, thinking, this is going to happen
on
here.
there's a chance.
This is not the 58th unbeaten game in a row as everyone had expected it to be beforehand. But on that, I notice, at the time, I was just kind of swept up in the game as a spectacle and in every tweets and people on the radio talking about it, and essentially that shock of, whoa, where has this come from? Especially having been 1-0 down, and actually, you do that mental thing after 15 minutes of thinking this will be a comfortable 3-0 for Celtic, probably. They make their living by seeing games out from that point. Is there a question mark that going ahead with 13 minutes to go at Celtic Park, such a big occasion, Neil Lennon at that stage in the game had made no substitutions. He went on to make 2. However, they were after having gone behind, with Hibs having brought on at this point Sinclair, Griffiths and Roberts, which I think is one of the biggest compliments that could be paid to Hibs on the day, is that they really did put the fear into Celtic enough that they felt the need to bring on guys they clearly didn't want to have to play.
Yeah.
But is there a question that Neil Lennon should have maybe made the defensive substitution that none of us necessarily want to see, but sometimes you need to see out a game? With 13 minutes to go, was there maybe an opportunity to bring on someone who maybe would help Bartley in those areas and maybe help to close the game out a wee bit, or is that being harsh?
No, I don't think so. Lennon's an experienced enough manager, in my opinion. He's got to have confidence in his team. They've went 2-1 up. It's really taken the game to Celtic. With 10 minutes to go, Celtic are going to have to equalise relatively quickly and score 2 goals within 10 minutes at home. You're right. They had just brought on arguably 3 centre forwards. They were going for they were going for the win themselves. Rodgers was making it abundantly clear by making those 3 substitutions. And I was disappointed that we didn't try and counter that in any way, shape or form. Legs do start to tire, especially when you've got players like Slivka and McGinn who have ran box to box for 80 minutes by that point. You've got Bartley whose legs start to tire as well.
McGeoch, who's no use to consistent 90 minutes. We've certainly been calling out on a regular basis and hear how little he's played. Actually, it was striking that he actually was able to comfortably navigate the 90 minutes on Saturday, but I was a wee bit surprised not to see a change there as well. However, the one thing that strikes you when you look at Hibs' bench is that actually, other than Porteous, it maybe is a wee bit light in that area.
Oh, that was one of the things that I was worried about at the start of the season, was our midfield. And people were talking about the flexibility of Whittaker if he comes in. If you've got a fit Gray and Stevenson, you've got the opportunity to play Whittaker in midfield, etc. For me, Porteous could have came on. He could have put 3 at the back, pushed Bartley in, maybe taken off one of the wingers, push Bartley into the centre midfield, and just say to McKinn, Slivka and Bartley, are you going 2 men to the ball, just close the ball down, and someone track back. It didn't happen. Not even 3 minutes elapsed before we were back to 2-2.
Yeah.
Tired legs. You could argue that Celtic gave Hibs too much room for the second goal. It was a great strike again from McGinn, and he's really put himself on Brendan Rodgers' shopping list for Christmas. Great finish. There was shock when it went in. I think it was shock from McGinn. I think there was shock around the whole stadium. It was like, are they going to do this? Is this it? Would this be the moment? Because no one knew how to react to it. Everybody's kind of looking round. There's a couple of people punching the air, and then of course they've realised they've actually scored. This deathly silence fell on Celtic Park. But coming back to your point around Lennon from a tactical standpoint, is there maybe that air of arrogance about him that sometimes thinks, maybe I'm still managing Celtic, I've got the depth and quality of these players that are going to see out the result within the 90 minutes? Possibly. And he's right to install the trust and the confidence in the players. But when you're away to the champions, you go 2-1 up, there's 10 minutes to go, 80 minutes have been played, and they've bust a gut. Get some fresh legs on, in my opinion. Celtic had done it. They brought on 3 really strong attacking players. They were going for the win. We've countered that. We've went 2-1 up. You're questioning, let's see it out. As Jose says, Jose Mourinho, let's park the bus. Get 9 men, 10 men behind the midfield.
So on the other side though, but as we say, basically before the shockwaves had even finished reverberating around Scotland on most of the report shows and things, Celtic had equalised 3 minutes later, and it sort of obviously, it literally was a fleeting moment where we thought, maybe this is going. However, on the brave side of Neil Lennon, although it was pretty late, it was sort of 89th minute, he did actually take off your holding midfielder for Simon Murray for the injury time period, in theory, in a move that looks like he was going for it, that he hadn't quite given up on being the party pooper and breaking Celtic's unbeaten record. What was your thought at that point when you see him bringing on a striker for a holding midfielder? Are you thinking, brilliant, let's go and try and do this in the last 3 or 4 minutes? Or are you thinking, are you mental?
Just before that, he brought Barker on for Slivka. And, so that was showing that he was not quite finished. Mm-hmm. That there was some pace about Barker to drive the ball forward. Brings on Murray. I don't think that's enough time, really, for a player to come on at Celtic Park, get enough into the game, settle the nerves, get himself into some good positions, get the link-up play building from the midfield and from the back four upwards. So for me, pointless substitution. I'd rather seen a substitution 10 minutes earlier where he's maybe bring on Porteous to support the back and then put 5 at the back and push Bartley that little bit forward, get Slivka and McGinn a little bit tighter in midfield and just try and get men behind the ball and breaking up play.
A wee bit more sort of game management type change.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other points that you would like to make about this game?
It was never a penalty at the end for Sinclair.
I know. It was funny. Listen, it's typical sort of Efe Ambrose to an extent. He does get wrong side and he doesn't cover himself in glory. There is a bit of a pull, but I would suggest if it's no enough of a pull for Scott Sinclair even to think about going down, then there's probably no huge amount. And I did hear Brendan Rodgers talk about handball on his after-match interview.
Did it not hit Sinclair?
I've not really seen a handball, and I mean I've only seen sort of extended highlights of the game, but I've not seen a handball penalty claim for Celtic.
It did. It bounced up at the end, but there was nothing in it for me.
Okay. So. Never a penalty. Any other points? I mean, obviously John McGinn was the star of the show. There's no really a question mark on that.
Stokes was a bit quiet.
Okay.
I mean, he came out the traps, won that free kick early doors. Tested Gordon with the free kick, but really didn't really have as much impact as what I was hoping for. Going back to Celtic Park, would he have been able to steal the show like he did in the cup final against Rangers? 57 games undefeated against his old employers, come back possibly upset, get the ball in the back of the net. But the star of the show was John McGinn, and if Lennon's valuing him at 5 million at the start of the season, then we'll slap a 10 million price tag on him now.
Yes, that's even more than Lennon said. He said it only went up 2 million. Right, okay, I think we'll leave the Hibs analysis there. We'll go at a very short break and we will come back to discuss Hearts' unfortunate defeat at Dens Park. Thank you for staying tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire.
Music for Scotland. Radio Saltaire. Radio Saltaire.
And we're back with Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire. Sean, are you ready for some analysis?
I am. Just before we start though, I have the results. Martin Boyle, 85 acceleration, 86 sprint speed. Jamie Walker, 86 acceleration, 84 sprint speed. Oh, so Martin Boyle's got him by 1 point.
Right.
Which is mental.
That's twice we've been said, but we really need to be more PC.
It's very enjoyable for playing with Jamie Walker on FIFA though.
Okay, on a slightly less funny matters than FIFA 18. Although it's no funny when you lose an online game and you want to smash the world.
You heard me on that party last night. I was ready to destroy a TV.
Okay, right. Speaking of wanting to destroy things, I think Craig Levein potentially left some damage in his wake at Dens Park after an incredibly frustrating and disappointing defeat to what is generally accepted to be a fairly poor Dundee team, although they are sort of righting their very, very poor start to the season now. We'll sort of start at the end and we'll maybe work our way back. We'll mental it a wee bit. First and foremost, the big talking point from the game. How surprised, amazed, astonished, insert your adjective here, are you to see a Craig Levein team lose that goal not just once but twice?
I am surprised, and then I'm not surprised when you look at the personnel who was involved for the mishap that's happened twice. I think that goes... What happened there from those set pieces plays into the hands of those people who are advocates for zonal marking. Because the whole thing is, if you've got 2 or 3 of your big men in the centre there, and it's just their job to attack it in their area, you probably get a challenge on that, a header. When you've got one of their centre halves up against Prince Buaban, and Buaban just can't really be bothered tracking, or he'll take a wee bit of a push and milk it for all he's got when he's never going to get a free kick for it. There comes your issue. We've made a 19-year-old centre half get both his first and second professional goal and make him look a cut above when he really shouldn't be.
The problem with the zonal marking argument, and you covered that wee bit yourself there, is that it still requires aggression and it still requires attacking of the ball, and there was a bit of lack of that. Of course, Buaban is massively at fault both times, and I mean, you just can't argue with that. But there's still the question of Kerwaddle's in like 3 yards of space both times, and you think, yes, Buaban has massively knocked off, but surely there should be someone else who either has the awareness to see, whoa, what's he doing here, or is just thinking, that's the flight of the ball, I'm going to go and attack it. Because in theory, if you see your man off, you can then take a yard, step back and go and actually see the ball away. Of course it's Buaban, but I do think there's an element of it being so obviously him at fault that everyone else can hold their hands up and say, well, it's not my responsibility because it was his man. I still think there maybe should have been someone else who goes and at least engages or at least tries to put Kerwaddle off to an extent. Surely, even with really poor marking, you shouldn't have like 3 yards of space in the opposition's area.
There should fully be a challenge for the ball from someone. The whole thing is, there's players in front of that who... you're staying with your man, but if the ball's going over your head, you can drop back a wee bit and try and go for it. If it falls to him off the rebound, well, someone else should have picked him up because you're challenging for the ball because they couldn't.
It is difficult.
Look, there's underlying issues with the way Hearts have handled those set pieces. The easiest thing to do is blame Prince Buaban for that because he had one simple job to do and failed on 2 occasions. Yes, he never started the game. He probably hasn't been prepped for the set pieces because we haven't been expecting him to be in there. Aaron Hughes, I think we would have been expecting to take one of their centre halves.
I think that's the point. It's probably not that Buaban shouldn't have been prepped for the set pieces, because if there was ever a consideration that he may have entered the field of play, he should have been prepped for the set pieces. But whether they would have prepped him as one of the centre halves in that position, and then there's a question about actually should he have moved the man on? Should someone with a wee bit more of a defensive mentality taken his man and he could have taken someone else? But I do think that's a fair point, that Buaban comes on against a man who would have been marked by Aaron Hughes, who is really wise and knows all the tricks of the trade and will, niggle into a guy and hold on and make sure. A lot of time you didn't actually see Aaron Hughes win that many aerial duels because a lot of time it doesn't really come to an aerial duel.
He ushers his man away for it, most likely.
It's exactly.
It's the knowledge that's gained from playing in the Premier League and learning how to, if you're playing that consistently, especially in teams who, yes, Newcastle, whoever, they were good teams, but they were never great teams. If you're conceding consistently from set pieces, it's going to be a big problem. So there's things that can be learned from that he clearly brings to a Hearts team, which was missing at the weekend.
One thing in terms of the goals, and we will move on for the goals to the general play in a moment, but the one thing in terms of the goals that I think it's difficult to attribute at least solely to Buaban. Now, he is a bit weak. As you said, especially the second goal, he takes a hand in the face, but you're never getting that given. And he decides to, for a moment, he thinks I'm going to milk it. Then he decides, actually, I'm not. And then once the ball hits the back of the net, he thinks, my face again. But Dundee do a good job of blocking. They utilise the Chelsea tactic that they used to utilise all the time of, I've just accidentally stood right in your way when you were going to attack the ball. And
it's a basketball. It's used in basketball all the time, and it's clever to bring it across to football.
Yes, however, I was a wee bit disappointed that, for example, it's Christoph Berra who's involved in the first stage of blocking. Berra's big enough and strong enough and experienced enough to, I would have hoped, anticipate that and clear those men out the way. Now, of course, he still marks his man. His man doesn't score, so he's not necessarily the person getting blamed for it, but he does sort of allow that block to take place, and that does take Prince Boabin out of the game. Should Hearts have managed the whole situation better? Should that block have been... I just feel like physically Hearts maybe could have sort of dominated Dundee a wee bit better.
I think it depends. Obviously, you've heard that over the course of the season on the show, me speaking about Christoph Berra's aerial presence and how he has been the X factor for Hearts in the air. So you can see Dundee would have targeted him for him to be the player getting the block
To take him out.
to have issues, because if he can't go for the ball, then there's no many other players going to win it. He's replaced Callum Patterson as being that huge player at the set pieces to go and try and win things. So the issue where we are just now, though, is out with him, how many other players do you expect to get their head on it? Mm-hmm. Yes, we do have some taller players who you fancy to be decent, but how many headers does Kyle Lafferty win? How many headers does Ross Callaghan win?
That's the interesting thing with the Hearts team, is that in certain respects already I think you can sort of see Levine's influence on it, and I do think it is a physical team. It's a physically strong team. Someone like Callaghan comes in and he is robust and he does graft and he wins challenges sometimes that he's no right to win. Likewise, Jamie Walker over the last couple of weeks you've seen taking massive strides forward in terms of his intensity and his aggression. However, it's still not the most dominant in the air, I think. So you look at even Conor Randall, I like, because I think he's got that wee scouse element to him, that he's got a ton of dig about him. Now, he is not a classically trained football player at all. However, a lot of teams, you look at Darian McKinnon, he's an established Scottish Premiership footballer, and the main reason is he's dirty AF.
Yeah.
So I like having that in your team. I think teams who don't have that oftentimes are a soft touch. They're essentially Ian Cathro's Hearts. However, I look at it and I still think there's a few of those guys that give that dig that aren't necessarily great in the air. Callaghan's alright in the air. Randall's too small, essentially, and he is one of the pack marking Dundee's threats in the air. There's still a bit of a question. You know, Michael Smith's a good natural defender, not necessarily going to dominate anyone in the air. I think you're right that Hearts probably are a wee bit reliant on Berra at the moment, and if a team can take Berra out the game, then it's coming down to 50-50 in the air. Is there any final points you want to make on the two set piece goals?
I think the biggest issue going forward for Hearts is, especially while we're still playing three at the back, we've got three main centre halves at this point in time. One who's got a reoccurring injury which doesn't look to be going away at any point soon. One of those three you would say is dominating in the air. It doesn't bode well for set pieces, because obviously you look for your centre halves to be those players winning the headers for you on a consistent basis.
So on that subject, do you think that's maybe, despite Craig Levine saying a couple of weeks ago that any supplemental players required for the squad will come for the youth team, given that Hearts are not really blessed with any hugely physical defenders in the younger teams, do you think that maybe that's one area where he may actually have to look to go and get something else for to bolster the defence?
I think he'll probably wait till January, but I think it will be somewhere we will try and strengthen come that time.
I think that makes sense. It's the same as looking at Hibs and looking at that sort of lack of defensive options off the bench, and Hearts are sort of the same. You know, Jelak played in the back three at Hamilton and essentially sold the jerseys for a goal, so you didn't really want to go back to that.
Yep.
And then, especially if you're struggling, you might have to change the whole system just because you can't find another adequate defender, which it isn't really something that a Premiership club should struggle with, being able to literally just find bodies for a shape. Right, let's talk about the rest of the game and the team in general then. Kyle Lafferty came back in having shaken off a bug and had an incredibly sort of momentous week in his personal life, declaring his gambling problem, and generally I think receiving a very, very supportive and altogether sort of positive and refreshing bit of feedback from the Scottish footballing public, which can be rather harsh at the best of times. Were you surprised to see the way that Hearts lined up, particularly in terms of the fullbacks, with Conor Randall going to right wing back and Martin Smith playing left wing back, and it being,
Michael Smith
playing left wing back, and it being much more classically 3-5-2 than we've seen before?
Not necessarily. We know, or certainly Michael Smith in interviews alluded to the fact that when Conor Randall dropped out the team the other week with injury, he was in line to be starting at right wing back. So it's not a surprise that he's necessarily came back into that position, and we've moved Smith to left wing back because we know he can play there. I still don't know the full scope of Ashley Smith-Brown's fitness. Obviously, I think that is possibly a factor why he came on for Grelak against Partick, why he's not started in the game there as well.
Well, wasn't even on the bench again at the weekend, so there's a big question about his fitness, I suppose.
Yep, which he is a good player. Whether he can come on physically with the battles is yet to be seen.
Yeah.
The main thing is we need to get him on the park at this point in time. So it wasn't a huge surprise. Obviously, you're going to have Walker breaking forward to join that two up front.
Right, one potentially big surprise then.
Yep.
Harry Cochrane got his first game.
Yes, a huge surprise.
We got pelters at the start of the season for suggesting that as a 16-year-old he may be able to sort of establish himself within Hearts' first team. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still a mile away from establishing, but Dens Park's a difficult place to go. And with that in mind, you would think that it would be tried and trusted players put out there, and Harry Cochrane started the game. What were your thoughts on that? Is that a huge pat on the back to him from Craig Levein?
It's a huge show of faith in the laddie. I think it's a huge sign of the intent going forward with Craig Levein as well, that he is willing to make. I mean, we remember from his first time in charge, it never worked, but against Celtic playing, what was it, David Meechan at right midfield, in one of the biggest surprises.
McKeown, you're right. Yeah,
Aye.
David McKeown, yeah. And he also played Wilfred Wayfield in the same...
Willie Wayfield.
A similar game, I think, against Celtic and Tynecastle.
So it's not a huge shock to see him go with something somewhat out the ballpark. You're not quite expecting it. But at the same time, Harry Cochrane was in the first team throughout pre-season, has barely been on the fringes since, so it is a... Through
injury, mainly.
He has been walking about with a big blue boot on, yeah. So, yes, it is a surprise for him to come straight in. I think maybe if we had seen him one or two sub-appearances before getting the start, it would have made more sense. But at the same time, nothing's going to give the laddie more confidence than, look, you're the guy, we're going with you just now. Go and show us why age is just a number, and if you've got it, then you deserve to start.
Okay, moving the conversation on to something that we've discussed with Hibs a lot, but seems to have crept into Hearts, particularly over the last couple of games, because actually Hamilton, they started very well. Aberdeen, I suppose you could say that they started fairly poorly, but switched on after sort of 20 minutes or so. The last couple of games, Hearts have started really poorly, off the pace. I mean, against Partick Thistle, they had a couple of chances in the first half, but generally speaking, I would say that was probably somewhere between a 3 or a 5 out of 10 performance. Dundee, generally speaking, seems to be, the reaction has been even worse than that. Why is it that Hearts are struggling so badly in the first half of the game, and it seems to be requiring the Craig Levein hairdryer treatment to then bring a team who has some sort of forward momentum in at the second half?
I'm not entirely sure, to be perfectly honest. There's obvious factors with... There's somewhat of a disconnect between the forward line, who are so attacking, with such attacking intent, to the solidity of the back line, who are happy to pass it between themselves there can be somewhat of a disconnect there, that you're not getting that fluidity through the centre of the park to link those two together. I don't know if that's necessarily the factor, though. It just seems to be... There has been... Craig Levine's given the interviews to allude to the fact that since he's came in, so much of the focus has been on the fitness side of things and less so the flow of play. We had a full discussion about it last week, Mark, that we do need to emphasise a Hearts style of play now. We do need to be able to get that across.
Do you think it's more tactical than mental then? Is your thinking that it's not that the players go out and they're not switched on or they're not 100%, it's that the football's just not flowing? Because I think that the general consensus amongst football fans always tends to go to mentality rather than tactics or ability. It tends to go to, we're no up for this, or our heads aren't in the game.
I think it can be, if you're not 100% ingrained in what the style of play is going to be, what is fully expected of you and is fully expected of the players who are playing around you, that can be an issue. If you're going to chase down a man on the right hand side, but you're thinking, oh wait, but is this guy coming across behind me to cover that space? If so many things can throw you off your game.
So could it then be argued that the reason that Hamilton doesn't follow that pattern, the reason that Hamilton was actually a good start, is Hearts had a decent attack and scored the goal, and then suddenly everyone buys in? As in, if you go ahead in a game, you're thinking, oh, we're on here, we've got this going, and suddenly some decent football breaks out for a period of time. Whereas if the game's scrappy and it's 0-0 and you can't quite get a foothold, or you've not got something to hold on to, then you're thinking, I'm not quite sure yet how this works. I'm not entirely confident in my position. Is that why you think maybe Hearts take a wee while to get into the game, and then where there's wee seeds sown of confidence, a decent shot at goal, a decent opportunity or scoring, then suddenly people start to think, right, okay, there's a confidence level here, I understand how this works again, and Hearts push on as they did in the second half?
Look, everyone should know how much momentum plays a factor in football. Anyone who's played FIFA 18 should know that momentum plays such a factor in football. Starting like a house on fire against Hamilton, getting an early goal, the way it happened, the kick it gave the crowd up the backside, the way Callaghan celebrated it, set Hearts up perfectly to go on from there. When it's hard, especially away from home, even when we're taking big away supports, Partick was fairly empty. When you looked at it, we filled out that main stand. We filled out the main stand pretty well. But when you've got one stand that's no even there, you've got other stands that it's just wee pockets of people. It's hard to get that atmosphere to fully drive on the team because.
But again, that sounds like a mentality issue then, rather than a tactical one. That sounds like the players aren't fully at it because they're not motivated.
But what I'm saying is, with that lack of, or that little bit that's missing tactically, it can't fully be made up for with the mentality, because you're coming off results that aren't great. They're not fully going your way. You're not sure what play is going on around you. It just seems like there's not that one driving factor with Hearts just now, grinding out the results and making sure we're flying into tackles early on in the game. It's a feeling out process, which I don't know exactly why, but it needs to be rectified soon.
I agree with some of it. I mean, I watched back on the Hearts game over the weekend, and I felt attacking and going forward, Hearts created a lot of chances. I thought Walker had a lot more energy about him, and that was something that you've touched on, Sean. He was getting himself into some really good positions. Bain was outstanding for Dundee. There was 2 or 3 fantastic saves from Bain, in my opinion. You know, on any other day they would have hit the back of the net. Hearts would have been coming away with a 3-1 or a 4-1 victory in my eyes. So I don't want you to be too self-critical of
I think that's an ongoing problem for both Hearts and Hibs, though, that we can create so many chances and so little of them are actually hitting the back of the net.
Well, that's the difficult thing with this conversation as well, is that it literally is 2 moments of complete idiocy in a defensive perspective that cost you a game. And of course, you can't remove goals from the context of a game completely, because they very much set the context of a game. However, it's incredibly harsh to probably sit and say everything's negative, when if Prince Buaban does a bit of simple marking twice in the game,
even if he just jumped, that's something to try and put Waddle off.
Let's start to wrap up.
There is definitely positives to take from the game,
right? So let's talk on the positive. Okay. The one obvious positive being Kyle Lafferty's awareness, his anticipation, and a brilliant finish, having gone round Scott Bain from a pretty acute angle.
From the weirdest back pass I've ever seen in my life.
Well, from a shocking first touch.
That's why I said anticipation, because why Lafferty was in that position off the shoulder of the last man, expecting Musa to knock a 40-yard back pass into no man's land, I've no idea. However, it's a brilliant bit of finishing, and it's massive for a guy who then went and noticeably hugged Austin McPhee and Craig Levein to essentially say thank you for the support they've already given him, and that they've promised to continue to give him through his problems that have been made very, very clear in the past week. How big was that for him from a mental standpoint to, essentially show none of this is going to affect me on the pitch, and I'm still here to contribute. I'm not a sympathy case. I'm very much someone who's still here to contribute.
Well, that's one of the biggest factors for Kyle, is the fact that he can go out and show that he can still be the big game player. He can be a driving force up front, and actually he's not going to be a liability. The off-field antics aren't going to bleed onto the pitch and cause him to have negative performances. I did call him being the key player for Hearts last week. Anyone who listened live into the show, I think hopefully that'll look. Who knows the ins and outs of what's going on off the pitch. I hope that can breed confidence within him, though, to drive on and maybe get some more goals and look in the form he looked in pre-season, carrying on into the season. So it's a huge thing for him. I think the biggest thing for Hearts as well is that we can get consistently Isma and Lafferty up front together, because the Isma we see with a strike partner, especially Lafferty as a strike partner, is entirely different to the Isma we see when he plays up there on his own. He gets less attention from the defenders because they want to occupy the big, tall Kyle Lafferty. Mm-hmm. He gets that freedom to drift out wide and do a few things. There's a couple of times he showed his strength getting by men. I think by the end of the season I'm going to be able to knock up a full old Nike advert just of Isma, though, hitting the bar and knocking it back to himself and hitting the bar. It seems to happen all the time. We need one or two more to hit the back of the net for him. But the link up between him, Walker and Lafferty looks like it can be there. We need one or two more to hit the back of the net, and they can be on to something.
That's the small positive for Hearts that comes out of this. Is even in defeat, the first defeat of Craig Levein's time at the club, there was still a period of time, albeit maybe only 20-25 minutes, where Hearts played in a manner that you would expect them to play at Dens Park against a struggling Dundee, where they did dominate, as Mark said, where they could have scored 3 or 4. Now, it's no good enough to do it for 20-25 minutes, but what that shows is you are capable of it. And I think that was the concern, particularly towards the end of Ian Cathrow's reign, was, once those Rangers results were sort of confined to the distant past, it essentially became like, can we still do this? In April and May, I think it really was a thing of, have we still got a team in there, or is this gone completely? We are showing at the moment that there are times where Hearts can go out and they can do the right things. They did it against Aberdeen for 70 minutes. They did it against Hamilton for the first half an hour and then doggedly saw the game out. Partick Thistle, less so, maybe 10-15 minutes at the end when Milinkovic came on. Dundee, almost an entire half, but it is stupid mistakes that are then shooting them in the foot. It's very similar to the Liverpool situation. It's no scoring enough goals when you're on top and then making really daft errors at the other end that cost you points. Any final points on Hearts. Anything that needs to be changed or worked on over the international break? I mean, can you put a number on quite how many corners Craig Levine's going to have knocked in over the next 2 weeks prior to the Ross County game?
Well, I think there'll be a lot defensively. I think there'll be a lot from an attacking standpoint as well, because Hearts actually hugely outnumbered Dundee for corners. And when you watch the highlights, I don't think there's even one on it,
no.
Which shows how much we're actually doing with them. For a manager who was criticised for his teams being big and physical and
playing percentage football,
demanding, dominating in the air, that's somewhat unacceptable for a team now. So I think there'll definitely be work on that, because look how that can be. You can be the worst team in the game.
One Dundee a game on Saturday.
Yep, exactly. Look, it's kept Tony Pulis in the Premier League for years upon years. So that's definitely something that can be worked upon. I think, as I say, it's developing the play. I think we need to get more of a midfield link up with the forward three as well. How we go about developing that, I don't know. There seems to be quite a bit of switching still in their centre midfield. It seems like Callaghan's took the steady place, but it's who's going to partner him all the time. We could definitely do with nailing that down.
Okay.
Over and above that, hopefully getting Aaron Hughes fit. I don't think he'll be making the international trip now, so hopefully he'll get some time to rest.
Okay, perfect. As we wrap up then, I will direct all of our listenership, but particularly the Hibby side, to our Facebook page. There's an event on there being advertised, a quiz night in aid of charity. I think Dnipro Kids and Radio Saltire, the lovely home of this show, that Scott is organising. Scott, our erstwhile colleague, who feels like he's never here anymore, obviously because he's very busy organising this
quiz. Didn't he sound sad about it? I'm enjoying it.
Obviously because he's organising this quiz night. So there's already been confirmation. If you go on the Facebook, you'll see there's confirmation that there's a couple of ex-Hibbies already confirmed as appearing. There will be more of that. There will be more to be announced about exactly what prizes you can win while you're there, exactly the format of the competition. It's, I believe, £5 per head or £25 for a team of 5. If you buy per head, you will be assigned to a team on the night, so there will be no unfair advantage. So it'll be a great night. I believe we're going to enter a Jambo team in it and see how we can fare. So at the very least, you'll get to come along and point many curse words in the direction of people. I mean, we'll have to wear maroon. We will have to wear strips.
You'll not get in the Hibs club.
We can wear a Hearts tie, surely. Come on, we're there to be.
I'm going to borrow the Harry suit, so prepare for that.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, maybe we'll not do Hearts tops then, but we need to have something to mark us out as being the ones to be ridiculed in the corner. Yes.
I'll sit beside you just to keep you safe.
But it is a challenge to you, because if you get beaten on Hibs knowledge table of no, if you get beaten by the team of Jambos though, so if you're buying a ticket, which we very much hope you do, because it will be a fantastic night, maybe get the wee Hibby encyclopedia out as well. Get on the Wikipedia and get brushing up, because if we beat you, then you will have to hang your heads in shame. Right, any other business, lads? Anything you want to bring up before we go?
Mark, you seem dead certain that McGinn's going to get a game for Scotland. Give us your justification why.
He's a £10 million player.
He's a £10 million player. We've got McGinn, Super John McGinn. I just don't think you understand.
Okay, I think we'll leave it
on
there.
dead certs though. Christoph Berra definitely starts for Scotland.
Okay, so we may have Hibs and Hearts representation, which is an excuse to watch Scotland, I suppose, if you're into masochism. Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. As I say, get on the Twitter at MNFootball, get on the Facebook. You'll see all of the updates about that charity event that we're organising. Thank you very much for being with me, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.